We're back. Welcome back to the Cadillac build. I got a serious topic to talk to you about today. I've been looking for a while now on YouTube and I just can't find another video showing you the right way to do this job. So in my daily job, I end up having to fix this issue almost every day, whether it was done incorrectly or been sitting around for a long time. I do this a lot, so I'm gonna show you how I do it to prevent further future maintenance that is unnecessary. I'm talking about brakes. I replace or service brakes on a daily basis, doing safety inspections. Let me pull these wheels and show you what the status of this Cadillac is, and we'll go from there. I'm just gonna measure the pad first, just to get an idea of how much pad is left. I always like to measure on the top and the bottom on each pad, just because your pads can be worn. If you have a stuck slider, your pad can wear on an angle and you could have 6mm pad up at the top and possibly 2mm on the bottom, at which point you're gonna wanna make sure you fix that. Looks like I have just over 6mm pad on both inner and outer pad, which is a good sign. It does look like this rotor has been replaced somewhat recently. As you can see, it's got that coating on it still. I mean, it doesn't look the best or the worst. You're kind of looking for hot spots and usually dark areas show hot spots, which means your brakes aren't cooling as much as you want them to, or you're overusing your brakes. A lot of times rust ridges build up. As you can tell, there's no rust ridge, so these pads were replaced fairly recently, which shocks me that there's only 6mm pad left. From the condition of this rotor, I would expect there to be usually at least 8 to 10mm pad left. Aftermarket pads are usually 11mm in the front, brand new, and I believe these were replaced within the last 10,000 kilometers. We'll just make sure that these caliper pistons are pushing back fairly easily and that my sliders aren't seized, causing an overheating issue and limiting the life that these brakes should have. There's a few ways to push back the caliper piston. I'm not gonna push it all the way back right now because I usually like to clean up around the piston before I actually push it in if I'm changing the pads. You can use a screwdriver like this. Some people frown upon it. Just make sure that you are on the rotor and you're not damaging your pad. You can also use a C-clamp, and if you put a C-clamp in here and hook it around, you can also compress it that way. I'm just wanting to get a little bit so I can see if everything's free and if my pads are also free. See, I got it back a little bit. Both sliders are free. Now if I pull it all the way this way, I can take a look to see if with my pads, I can hook the pad and just see it moving in there. So when I service brakes, you can see right in here how these clips were just put on raw, no lubricant. And you can see they're building up some rust. They are free, which is awesome. I would pass this on a safety. Somebody has lubed the backing plate of the pad, which is something that I also do, but I do prefer cleaning up these clips and putting some lubricant on both sides, and also cleaning up where these clips sit, which is commonly done incorrectly. And I'll show you how to do that, how I do that, the best way to make it look just beautiful. Because these are at 6mm, that means they're roughly around 50% of their life, which is, in my opinion, a really good time to pull it all apart, clean all the brake dust, clean all the rust, re-lubricate all your lubricate points, pull your sliders out, clean your sliders, clean everything. I'll show you exactly how I do it and how I would like everybody else to do it also. So when you are pushing back calipers, you always have to keep in mind that the most of the corrosion and particles in the brake fluid are gonna be right in this caliper. If you push back your piston, you're pushing the fluid back up into the master cylinder through possible valves, your ABS module, and you can potentially damage your hydraulic system with that debris and corrosion that you possibly could push up into there. So best practice is to crack your bleeder screw into a bottle, push back your piston, and the fluid will go out into the bottle or into whatever, a catch basin of any type, which will prevent that possibility of sending foreign material into a sensitive valve assembly. So after my little inspection I just did on all four corners, looks like I have a different rotor on the front right and the front left. They both do look like they have been replaced at some point. All four of my calipers seem to be free. The pistons push back. All sliders on all my calipers are also free. None of them are seized, which means there's no corrosion in them. I'd be happy to install new rotors and pads, knowing that my calipers aren't seized in any which way. Rears we're gonna be replacing because they're down to 2 millimeter of pad life. In the next video, I will be putting on, not sure what type of pad and what type of rotor, but I do want to go with a higher quality aftermarket street racing. Comment down below on what type of rotors or pads or even calipers you recommend, whether they're Willwood or EBC. Let me know, and then I can make up my mind on what I'm going to install back there. All right, so now we're just going to pull off this caliper. I'm going to pull out the pads, and I'm going to take off the caliper land. We're going to bring this baby over to the vise, and I'll show you how I clean it up. These can be a nightmare to get out sometimes. That's why that impact driver really does help. If it isn't cracking it, you can heat it around it with a torch, or even a propane torch will help break the seat. You can tell the amount of rust on this hub surface I do not like. This is the one thing that they service these with a lot of lubricant. This is how I like to do it. I also like to clean all the rust off of here and put some Never-Seez on there, and that just prevents it from looking like this in the future. You can see that that brake's been just sitting there. It wasn't quite moving as free as you want it to move. And since this pad was a little stiff, now, if you have a vise, you really should have one because it makes it a lot easier to hold it while you clean everything. So you can see here that there is a lot of brake dust. I'm gonna pull this clip off. We're gonna pull these off, and since we're just servicing these, we try not to break any of the tabs that hold on. You can just buy these hardware kits if you want, and then you don't have to clean this up at all, but these look like they were very recently replaced. And we're gonna see why these pads were so stiff in there. So in these surfaces, you can see the rust in there. It's not that bad. I see a lot worse all the time. I'll show you how I make this smooth, basically brand new, and how I service the sliders and make these boots basically brand new and supple. All right, so basically I'm just gonna do a full service on this caliper land right now. The tools I like to use, wire wheel on a drill, wire brush just to clean up some areas that the drill can't get access to. Chisels, very important. I use them to scrape all the rust off. I got a rag for servicing these sliders. You need to be sliding at all times. And a lot of times I find that either the boot's not on right, you get corrosion in here, which then leads to this slider seizing in place, which then causes your pads to overheat, wear incorrectly. It's just not how you want it to work. I'm gonna clean out the crevice here just so it allows for better cooling. These do get filled up with brake dust and it becomes like a hard rock in there. So just with the wire wheel, you can see in here that there still is a buildup of rust where those clips sit.
like to use two different types of brake lube. Technically, you can use one or the other. I just find that this blue lubricant is a little runnier and I'm able to get it into the sliders easier, so I prefer using this for my sliders. This clear lube is a little thicker. Like if I use my finger to wipe on the blue lube, it kind of wipes it off, whereas when I leave this lube on, it kind of stays there. So I like using this for where I'm gonna put it on the clips and on these clips. And also one interesting fact when it comes to brake lube and brake dust is if you're trying to clean a caliper or anywhere that there has been a buildup of brake dust, the best product to use is brake lube. It'll just clean that hardened brake dust right off compared to other products like brake clean and stuff where it just kind of dries it up. This almost revigorates the brake dust, so then you can just wipe it off. And when I'm applying this brake lube to the area underneath the clips, I just like to put a very thin layer just to prevent corrosion from building up and rust from forming. But you don't want too much because then you can kind of hydraulic your brake pad in there, which makes it even tighter. So just a nice coating. And then on these guys, I do put a little extra brake lube. Some people say that brake lube's not great because it attracts dirt. From our experiences, from my maintenance background, fleet maintenance background, the more brake lube on these clips, the better lasting the life were of the pads, and nothing would ever seize up. And so when you service it, you just go in there, you wipe off the old dirty brake lube, but you apply new fresh brake lube. You don't have to do any of the chiseling that I was just doing. And then after you've done that with your rag, just clean off the inside just to prevent you from putting grease on the rotor when you're installing this land. Just helps with it not sticking to the rotor surface. Because somebody has used lube on the back of these before, you can tell that it still looks quite pristine. Like most times I get in here, either this backing plate is like rusting off of the actual pad, or you see big rust witness marks. This is actually one of the nicer pads that I've ever come across. Before I bring over my freshly lubricated caliper land, we're gonna need to clean up this hub for the rotor to go on. We're gonna clean up where the caliper sits on the caliper, and we're gonna clean up caliper itself, get some lubricant on there, and get all that brake dust out of there, and get all this rust out of here and some never sees on there. I got a couple different tools that help clean up these hub surfaces. Blue Point Snap-on make this hub cleaner. These little pads are replaceable. They just thread on, thread off, and they go right over top of the stud, clean the surface like that. I also use this 1-inch diameter wire brush on a drill, and I can come in here like this. And I also do use my 3-inch wire wheel, and also brush, and a brass brush for anywhere near some sensitive boots.
forget to torque your wheels when you put it down. 140 foot-pounds for this car. So that's how I have learned over the years to service brakes. I've learned from a few different mechanics at Whistler Blackcomb, which was just strictly maintenance. So we were servicing brakes all the time on every service. And that is what we did. And that is how we've found it worked the best, especially because now I should be able to just remove everything, clean it with a rag, and then reapply lube. And no wire brushing and scraping, because that sucks, and it takes a lot of brake jobs that I see aren't done in that fashion. No lube, and flat rate mechanics these days are basically trained to work as fast as they can, and that is not the fastest way to do it by far, by any means, because it takes way longer to go that thorough. And it's just not gonna happen it's just not the way that the industry is trying to breed their mechanics these days. So for DIY, that's the best way to do it that I've seen done in the past. I rarely ever come across people doing brake services or replacing new brakes in that fashion. So thanks for watching me working on my brakes and how I recommend everybody do their brake jobs also. Whether you're new or you're experienced, that's just gonna make my brakes last a lot longer and a lot easier to work on in the future. So I really appreciate the time you guys spent to watch this video, and hopefully you can watch our upcoming videos on repair, on the Cadillac, on the Subaru, on the Honda, on my Harley. They're all gonna be great videos for you to learn something new.
Like, dislike, hate, subscribe, comment in this box down here, and tell us what you think, what you want to see, and what we're gonna do is gonna try and react to whatever you're writing and whatever you're liking and whatever you're disliking, and let's make some awesome videos.